Hello, my geometry students. We are doing another day of right triangle trig. It's a little different, but it gives you a chance to practice. So here it's just saying use trigonometry to find the missing side length, round your answers to the nearest hundredth. As a good little reference at the top of the page, why don't we write down TOA to remind ourselves which side goes with which. All right, for every single question, I want you to base it on the angle that you're being given and then label the sides. So this is the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. Technically the adjacent, but since it's not labeled, I'm not going to bother. So if I am working with opposite and hypotenuse, that's going to be my first function or sine. So if sine equals opposite over hypotenuse, let's fill in. So the sine of 25 degrees is equal to 8 and then over x. In this case, it's a little bit different than what we did yesterday, and that when you multiply the x over, you end up with x times the sine of 25 equals 8. So then you have to go one step further. I would wait to plug into the calculator until I get the x all by itself, because you don't want to round mid-problem. So now I would go in and say, okay, let's do 8 divided by sine of 25, and then get my answer from there. So 18.9 nearest hundredth, so 18.93. Let's try the next one. So 49 degrees, label your sides. So here's opposite. You don't really need it in this case because there's nothing there, but if you want to practice, hypotenuse, adjacent. The two sides with labels, the hypotenuse and the adjacent, which means up here, adjacent hypotenuse, that's cosine. So if we think cosine of 49 degrees and then equals the adjacent 13 over the hypotenuse x. So it looks similar to the last one because x is in the denominator. So you got to multiply the x over, and then x times cosine of 49 equals 13. And now divide both sides by that cosine of 49. So into my calculator, 13 divided by cosine of 49 degrees. And we end up with 19.82. As a good reminder, double check that your mode is still in degree mode. There's no reason if you've switched it the other day that it should switch back. But if you were using a different calculator, you're going to want to double check on that. All right. The next one, 32 degrees. Here's the opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. So I only have the opposite and the adjacent this time. That's my TOA, or tangent. So it's tangent of 32 degrees and then equals the opposite 23 over the adjacent x. If you're starting to catch that there's like a touch of a shortcut here, feel free. You can kind of shortcut your work. Otherwise, each time I like to show multiplying it over because I don't want to lose anybody in the process, and then dividing. All right, so into my calculator, 23, and then divided by, oh, just kidding, divided by tangent of 32, I get 36.81. Now, something to keep in mind as you're looking at these, I don't know what I just said. You want to make sure your answers seem reasonable. So far, we've been solving for the hypotenuse every time. The hypotenuse should be the longest side of the triangle. So at the very least, if this side's 8, it should be greater than that. So 18.9 works. Same thing here, 13, that's 19, that's a good sign. And then here was 23, this is 36, that's a good sign. Yeah, one last one here. I want you to try this one out. And then that's the video question, is what do you get for your answer for that one to the nearest hundredth? All right, let's move on. So feel free to pause so that you can do that. Number 5 on the next page, it says we've got in the diagram that RT is perpendicular to TX, so we see that right angle. TXS is 27, this is 18, and then SX is 21.2. So 21.2. All right. meters. To the nearest tenth of a meter, find the following lengths. So we've got a couple things going on. If we look for Tx, so if I put an X on this one, like a little X, I would have to focus on the little triangle that Tx is in. All right, based on that little triangle, and I might even redraw it so that I don't have too much stuff drawn in that picture. This is 21.2. This is what I'm looking for. This is 27. All right, if I look at this, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. If we're using adjacent hypotenuse, this one's going to be cosine. So cosine of 27 and then equals x over 21.2. So for this one, all I have to do to get x is just multiply both sides by that 21.2, and I can go right into my calculator from there. So 21.2 times the cosine of 27, and I get 18 point, let's say, nearest tenth of a meter, so 18.9 for that. So right here is going to go 18.9, and I can fill it in up here as well. All right, then it asks for RT. All right, well, RT, that's that full length there. So let's redraw and look at that triangle. All right, in that case, I've got a right angle here, and then this length, or actually, let's go with the angle, 18 and 27 total. That's a 45-degree angle. Ooh, all right, something should be coming to mind. We've talked about 45, 45, 90s. I don't really need that detail just yet, but if those two are equal, these two are equal. So if this was 18.9 right here, this is 18.9. Done. All right. If you want to write yourself a little note, because it's isosceles, go ahead. All right, last one, Rx. So Rx is this length then right here. So here's where we can use the idea of a 45, 45, 90. So it would be x, this is x radical 2. So then based on that, my value of x is the 18.9. So I shouldn't call that x there. I don't want to confuse you. That means this length would be 18.9 radical 2. Now we're not going to leave the answer that way because it says to the nearest tenth. So if you grab your calculator and do 18.9 radical 2, that comes out to be 26.7. And so that would be my length. And all of these would be meters based on the context from up above. All right. So that would be my 3 right here, 18.9, 18.9, 26.7. Last part says use the answers from part A and find the area of triangle RTX. So that's the whole thing. So the area of this big old triangle here to the nearest square meter. And then recall area formula. 1/2 base times height. I'm sure most of you probably remembered that one already. So if this is 18.9, this is 18.9, then this is my base and my height. So 1/2 of 18.9 times 18.9 should give me my final answer right here. All right. We get 714.42, but it says to the nearest square meter. So that would be about 714 meters squared. That would be my area there. All right, we're going to stop right there, the last page. We will recap tomorrow in class. So you might want to write a little note on it. And I'll see you guys then.